there's a place that I've dreamed of, where I can free my mind. I hear the sounds of the season and lose all sense of time. Feels like we're in a dream, you know what I mean.
Right there, Kent McIntosh.
Kent McIntosh, indeed. And we'd love to see you guys up there. In fact, there's been a few beds that have opened up, a couple, I should say, that have opened up. So, folks, we just posted it actually today. The cost, who you need to get a hold of, the phone number, the email, the website, anything that you could possibly need to learn a little bit more about Kent McIntosh. We have posted it today. And, of course, we would love to see you up there this September for our 5th annual CFN retreat. Looking forward to it. First and foremost, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. It is a Monday, and it is the eve of St. Patty's Day. I want to wish everybody a happy St. Patty's Day, but I'm pretty sure I don't need to do that. I think you all know how to have a good time. Steve, how you doing, my friend? Nice to have you with us. There he is, Shane Richard. Nice to have you as well, buddy. Adrian's in the house. Nice to have all you folks. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, it's easy for me to just put your name up and say hello and thanks for joining us. It means a lot. It really does. At the end of the day, the community appreciates the support. I know I do, and we love having you folks along with it because at the end of the day, there is a lot going on in CFN land, and hopefully we will be able to get to all of it tonight. We won't have a very long show. There's a reason for that, and I will get to that shortly. Lloyd's always a pleasure to have you. Tony, what do you got here to say? Hi, Scotty. Happy. No kidding. Holy smokes. Thanks, Tony, for reminding me of this. Man alive. Was talking to Pete LeDuc. I don't know if Pete's on here last night, but you folks got a mess of snow up north. Holy smokes. Are any of the highways even open yet? I know they were closed for a good part of yesterday, and I'm hoping everybody's okay. But needless to say, what a dumping you got up there this past weekend. First day of spring. Yeah, first day of spring. How does it look up there to you, Mark? How does the first day of spring look to you? Can't imagine what you're dealing with over by where you are as well. Jim's in the house. How you doing? May's with you. Hi, mate. Nice to have you along. There's the man, the myth, the legend, our buddy Ed McKenzie. Nice to have you along, Ed. Hopefully you're doing well. What do we got here? Watched Coca Machines End of Ice song. It was so sad. I probably should know what that is. Shane, I'm drawing a blank. Sorry, buddy. Watched Coca Machines End of Ice song. So sad. Hey, listen, if you can help me out, by all means. Does anybody know what Shane's talking about? Or am I the only idiot that doesn't? I apologize, Shane. I'm sure it's come to me, but I have drawn a huge blank. Gary's in the house. Just checking in. Always a pleasure to have you check in, Gary. As always, thanks so much for being a part of our community and joining us as you do every Monday. Rob's in the house. Look at all the Saskatchewan folks. Daryl's here. Yeah, baby. There's Alicia. Nice to have you along. I can assure you when it becomes softwater season, we will not see a lot of Alicia on Monday nights, if I know her well. How you doing, Blythe? Nice to have you here with us. Eve, always a pleasure as well. We've got Kelsey, and we'll get to Kelsey. There's actually a very important announcement we have to make, and I'm hoping her dad Ken is able to listen to it. Highways are still closed. Yeah, I can only freaking imagine. Oh, Pokey Machine dies. Ice reports for North Bay. Pokey Ice. He does music songs. Oh, okay. Koki. I probably should know, and I have no clue what you're talking about. So, he's a YouTuber. Okay, all right. Oh, thanks, Mark. YouTuber from Lake Nibs. He does many videos about the ice kid. Okay. Gotcha. Yes, I do. I didn't know that was his name, but I do watch him from time to time. Very thorough, great chap. Love to have him on the show to discuss how he goes about what he does, and of course his dedication to it. Much like our buddy, is it Michael Eddy down Lake Simcoe, Couchiching, who does the ice reports? I believe he's out of the Muskoka area. He does a lot of ice reports, as well as, of course, our good buddy John White, who's always keeping us in the know. Anyway, that was quite an opening amount of comments, and thanks. Also, awesome stuff for all of you folks for passing on this kind of stuff. Again, that it just makes the show that much more interactive. Kelsey, as promised, we were hoping to get a community video together. This was then many years ago. Why is that not coming up? Holy smokes! Oh, there we go. That's why. All right. Many years ago, Ken is in the Where's Waldo costume. This was a Halloween get together. Kelsey's in. It's either Kelsey or Angie. Can't remember who was wearing that mask, but could have been Angie, could have been Kels. But needless to say, it was a good time that day out on the Honey Hole, and got my first chance to meet Ken. We had a great time catching some walleye and a few other fish. We had a good time. It was an awesome time. The unfortunate thing is life changes things, and unfortunately, Ken was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in November. Ken's living on borrowed time right now, so we certainly hold every second, every minute sacred, because we never know if it's going to be our last. But Ken, on behalf of all of us here at CFN, we're hoping that you're comfortable, hoping that you find peace, and hoping that you go without any pain or suffering. At the end of the day, cancer is something that absolutely sucks and has rocked all of us. It's unfortunate to see you suffer and be in the position that you are. I'm hoping that you're not suffering all that bad. I'm hoping that hospice or anybody else who's caring for you is looking after you in a way that is alleviating a lot of the pain and just sheer uncomfortableness that I'm sure you're dealing with, not to mention, of course, all the fuss and attention people are having. So instead of remembering what today is like, let's remember what yesterday looked like. And Ken, as I said, all the best to you, my friend. As I said, hopefully you're able to find some peace. Hopefully you're able to find some comfort, and you're surrounded by family when that day comes. But we're thinking about you, pal. You take care. May all the fishing be yours. And Kels, thanks so much for allowing us to be a part of this, because at the end of the day, it's the unfortunate part of hearing the news that we have to deal with, then sort of the prelim to it. So this was a unique situation that allowed our community to get involved, and I want to thank you for allowing us to do that, and giving Ken our blessings, and of course our best wishes, and hopefully you sleep well tonight, Ken. All the best, pal. Oh, it's never easy starting a show like that, and I will say, for those who have loved ones that are struggling through cancer, have dealt with cancer, have beaten cancer, or perhaps have lost their fight, and that's such a terrible thing to say. You don't want to say that they lost their fight, but eventually it does take some of us, and hopefully we can figure out whatever the heck that is, so that we don't have to have awkward situations like this. But Ken, again, thanks so much for allowing us the ability to share your time, because I know how valuable that is nowadays for all of us who have lost someone to cancer. You can certainly appreciate that. So again, Ken, thanks so much, Kels. I appreciate you reaching out and allowing us to be a part of it in a very, very small way. On a happy note, Jay Barnucz is not going to be with us today, and there is a pretty darn good reason, and it's that one there on the right-hand side to the right of the goose, the Canadian goose. geese, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, our good friend Steph Barnucz. It is her birthday. She's going to be 42 years old. No, I'm just kidding. You never ask a lady how old she is. That my mom taught me that years ago. So, Steph, happy birthday. No matter how many it's been, it doesn't matter. We're so glad and thrilled to know that you're celebrating it with your family. And if there's ever a day that we can excuse your dad, this would be the day. This would be the day. So we want to wish you a happy birthday. And Jay, you're an awesome father. You're an awesome friend, and we wish you well tonight as you are enjoying some time with Steph, Heather, Trevor, the entire family. Make sure you spoil the heck out of her. She deserves it. You know she deserves it, and she demands it. So if you don't, you're going to get it. And you heard it here first. With that being said, I do have a few other announcements that I want to get to. Of course, one of the big ones is the Toronto Sportsman Show that is coming up this weekend, and it starts on Thursday. The Made in Canada Tackle Show is going to have a small part of this show, and we're very pleased to have the number of vendors that we have. In fact, I thought I had the video queued up, but I guess I didn't. Either way, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you folks down at the Toronto Sportsman Show, as well as all of our Made in Canada tackle vendors. And we're looking forward to a heck of a show, a heck of a turnout, and a few stories that I'm sure we're going to be able to share. But with that being said, let's get to the one, the only Big Jim McLaughlin. And as you can tell by the video, I still haven't got to editing certain parts of it out. But please forgive me.
When he was born, he tried to reel in the umbilical cord. Bass named him as their personal best. His power pole came with a stripper. Forward-facing sonar uses him to find fish. Chuck Norris is his co-angler. He is the most interesting fisherman in the world. Stay fishing, my friends.
There he is, the master of disaster, the one, the only. Yeah, boom shakalaka.
I don't know how I made it through the weekend.
But and every time I talk to you, you seem more and more tired.
I told you, Tammy went in to get prescriptions in Gananoque this afternoon. She came out. She texted me, said, "Come get me at the door," because I was parked way down in the back of the lot. And then next thing I know, she's beside the truck. She walked over, and I fell asleep in the truck.
You're saying it like it's a bad thing, and meanwhile I'm doing one of these like, yes, he got some sleep.
I thought for sure I'd sleep last night, and it was just
I would have thought so as well. But yeah, I would have thought so as well. Well, as I said, there's always tonight. That's the beautiful thing about tomorrow, is there's another chance to get at it. But speaking of which, what you were busy doing this weekend, you were down at the Quinny show, and this is a show, Jim. It's the little show that grew. I know we talk about that as about CanCast all the time, but really, like, the Quinny show is that show. It is a small show.
That was 26 years this weekend.
Yeah, it's a massive show now.
Yeah, I mean it's the whole facility, upstairs, downstairs. All the ice surfaces, every nook and cranny. Well, look where we do the seminars, out in the lobby, for God's sake.
Yeah,
that's where they have us out there. You get nice fireside chats. Like, it was cool for me. We had. I was thinking there. God bless you, Ken. I was just thinking of that, and I don't know whether I'd shown you this picture. I found this just a little while back of me when I was not in the best of ways.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, so I feel for you, Ken. I feel for you a lot. But I was down at the show, and we had these young lads here that we were talking to, and then we got them, and we where is it here? It was right at the end, and I hooked them up big time.
Did you ever?
I went into the prize bag there. They got about 15 items there, so it was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
Kind of cool. Yeah, I know, that still just brings a smile to my face. When that was all said and done, the mother came up. It was funny because they were sitting right in the front, and about every 30 seconds, the one of the guy that had I think it's 13 fishing rod there. It was green. About I'd say, any questions? It was like me in school. Teacher.
Yeah, but all the teacher wanted to know is if you wanted to leave.
From this beer I had left in my locker. No. We having beers for 2 periods now. But I said it was so funny. At one point, I almost brought the kid up. I was going to bring him up, sit him on a stool, and say, "How about her, buddy?"
That's awesome.
Trade some secrets with us, and the mother was there, and she's going. I guess he's wild until he gets put on the spot, and then he just that would have been it, eh? But yeah, it was. Really,
Someone said that about you, Jim, that you're wild, but as soon as you put him on the spot, very well mannered, knows his piecing. I'm just kidding. This past week,
I got proof that I can be dressed up and taken out.
Oh, dude, I wanted to get to that. I was going to get to that. This was. It's interesting that you said this before we went live, and I thought that myself that this classic seemed a little earlier than the one that you and I.
I think it was a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks. I'm not sure. I got to go check. I got to go look back to it because I know when we went down there, I don't think we even had jackets, did we?
No, it would. I at one point, I know this isn't going to be a stretch, but I was wearing shorts because it was so beautiful.
Yeah,
it was beautiful. But yeah, it struck me as odd. I thought it was a little bit later in the year as well that we went down there. I don't remember the date, but needless to say, or the exact date, but it did seem different weather-wise. That's for sure.
Because when we sat out in front of the hotel after I got the award there and those seats in front waiting for a ride, I mean, it was like 25 or something,
100%.
There was no jackets there. Everybody was just, sitting there minding their own business. It was really,
100%.
really good.
We'll get to that in a sec. Gary's asking about the show, and I know there's a lot that you probably want to talk about in regards to, when you talk about the seminars, the fact that they're done in the lobby where people are walking in. Do you think that enhances the whole experience?
I don't know. I think we talked about it because about 5 years ago when I sort of backed away from doing it and it became Dave's thing, and he asked me, can you stay coming, to it, and they took us down in the back of one of the rinks in this back room. And over the weekend, we had it was just Dave and a couple of other people and myself doing the seminars. And I don't think we had 75 people all week, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because it was just out of the way. But up in the lobby, you never know what you're getting.
No, true.
They're all like little fireside chats. There's only like 25 chairs there, and half of them are full. And yet the one I did on Friday, it was full. Saturday was decent, and Sunday there wasn't much at all. I was a little earlier. I was on at 11:30, but it was. Then I hung around till about, I guess it was 2 o'clock or a little after, and then I scooted home. Because it closes at 4 on Sunday now. That's one thing he's done. No more 6 o'clock on Sunday, because by 4 o'clock people are taking the boost down anyway because they want. He made it 4 o'clock there, so I skipped out a couple hours early because I was just feeling like a bag of dirt. So
it makes it for a long day going to 6 o'clock for everybody. So that makes sense going to 4 o'clock. Now, of course, Gary's like our producer tonight. Now he's asking about the classic, and we have a lot of stuff that we want to get to in regards to the classic. But I will say this, Jim. I don't know if this is doing wonders for Bass and Bassmaster, but what was the average age of the angler this weekend in the top 10?
Some of them had to have their parents sign for them to be there, I think.
I'm stunned at how young these anglers are and the stage that they're on. Like
forward-facing sonar.
So a lot of folks.
I have nothing against it.
Yeah,
I have nothing against it. Nothing that way that would commit to that.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of the old guys are pretty grizzled about it because, now you have to learn to play a video game, and kids today already know how to do that really, really well. Obviously, you've got to have a lot of basic knowledge, and these young kids are out there just hammering it, eh?
Yeah.
But this one really seemed to lean toward the forward-facing sonar.
I'd have to agree. They were saying in the prelim, talking about what they were expecting, and they had said that if they didn't get the rain that they had got, that this would have been a very shallow presentation. Probably forward-facing sonar wouldn't have had that much of an effect
As much
because
as
they were,
yeah, because in pre-fish, a lot of guys were showing big largemouths, eh?
Yeah.
But I mean, look at the people that we had there. Look at the Johnsons. Only one of them made it in decent at all. Cooper. I mean, he's pretty damn good with forward-facing sonar. Wasn't even in the game. It's a shame. That happens too. But see, he didn't do well in the Classic there the year before or 2 years before, and I think it's just one of those things where he just doesn't get along with that place.
it
He
could
doesn't
be.
get along with that place is sort of, and there's places like that.
Yeah.
Places like that. Like, I mean, I had a love-hate affair with Lake Simcoe until 1 year. And then like I won $125,000 in 3 months. It wasn't even
100%.
3 months, it was like 75 days on that lake.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, Steve. So Steven reminded us that it was March 24th to the 26th.
it was just a little later, eh?
Yeah, just a little later, but what a difference in terms of weather. Alicia mentioned something, and this is a great comment to make, Alicia. The Classic was amazing. Average age speaks to the state's high school and college programs, not just forward-facing sonar. These kids are getting the skills, knowledge, and confidence on the water, 110%. And I will say,
they've been working on that for a few years, though. It's coming big time, though. I think every year you see more and more schools involved in it.
and if I'm not mistaken, Dylan came from the Bass Nation side of things, where
I didn't get to spend as much time with it this year.
yeah,
I wasn't sure, but I know that he was he was so excited. I mean, who wouldn't be?
well, okay, Jim, and I want to get to that because there's something that I think I saw this of all the tournaments I've watched, and nowhere near as many as you, but the gathering, the entourage that he had, like this was back at the hotel after he won.
Yeah, he's talking.
Like, I love his reaction. His reaction is awesome.
Get a beer.
Yeah, it excites the crowd a little more. But they were showing footage of him on the lake, Jim, and there were boats following him around everywhere.
Oh, that's standard. I mean, they used to, KVD, look what he used to get.
Yeah, true.
60, 70 boats would be following him.
But keep in mind, that's KVD. This kid, virtually from the higher echelon of things, is a nobody. And I don't mean any disrespect to that.
No, I know what you mean.
But he's virtually a KVD. You would expect that kind of following. This kid had 30 boats. Every time he would take off good on plane, there'd be 30 boats following him. Like, it was incredible to see. So yeah,
he played to them a few times too.
What's that? Say that again.
He played to them a few times too, boy.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Some of the fish there, he made them feel welcome, and that was good.
But yeah, they
he
had
handled
mentioned
it well.
Everybody, Jeff's mentioning about the live scope, and yes, everybody had live scope. It was fair across the board with that. There were some rule changes which were interesting in terms of where you could position the transducer. So they Bass has gone forward with some rule changes to enhance the experience, both for the viewer as well as the participant. And then there was an interesting rule, Jim, that was added, and I'm not sure how this could possibly make that much of a difference, and I'm hoping you're going to be able to explain. But it was a 15-inch limit that I guess they've never had before.
Yeah, they've had different stuff. Like, I think Gussie had to deal with that too, did he not?
They were saying that this may have been the first year for the 15-inch rule.
Okay.
I don't know. I might be wrong, but it seemed like and the only reason was the predictions early on Sunday when they were talking was they were expecting large bags. Well, they've already had large bags, so that was kind of a no-brainer. But they said that this 15-inch rule had a big play in that. And I'm not.
Maybe that was lower than. Maybe it was lower than what it was when Gussie was there. I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't follow it like I used to.
Yeah.
I just don't. I just don't have the time to do it because I used to be. I knew how many rods every guy had in their boat, that kind of stuff. It was, I used to be right up on top of it, but no, it's definitely changed. And it's, I just noticed that the comment there about forward facing sonar and side imaging. I've used side imaging a lot, and boy,
Mhm.
what you can learn from side imaging is pretty impressive, but it does not compare to forward-facing sonar. When you get in a boat with somebody who is dialed in and knows how to use it, it's freaking amazing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And they were talking about
But
folks.
like I said, it's what it is now.
Well, Jim, that's why I wanted to get to,
Yeah.
because they were talking about lads, from your era, from your vintage, who, even though it was a paper graph, maybe it was an entry level machine that they were using, but they were talking about there was a bunch of names that were able to figure out what type of fish it was based on the pixel on the screen. That there was, like, Dave Fritz was one name that they brought up, who had it dialed in, who could tell you the species based on what he saw on his screen, just because of years of and time on the water. That to me is more incredible, or harder for me to fathom, than someone looking at live scope and being able to figure all this
experience,
out.
Yeah. It's just years and years and hundreds of tournaments on the water. Guys like David Fritz have fished more tournaments than these top 5 kids put together will probably do in their life. Maybe, you know what I'm saying?
And that was the other thing, Jim, again, and this isn't a slight, nor am I trying to, call out the elite or the older and more seasoned anglers, but you could really tell that we've got a new wave of bass competitors coming up through the ranks.
Yep.
And it's exciting. I mean, for me, maybe I don't understand all the inner workings, but it's very exciting to me, because we're always here pumping the tires of the next generation of anglers. Well, we said it last year, there it is. Here it is. Like, this is incredible to see the youth that is now taking over this sport. It's truly incredible.
I think it's really cool.
I have to agree. Now, Jeff mentioned, I think Steve mentioned up there too. So 2023 limit for smallies was 18.
Yeah, that's 15. What it was.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So Jeff was just saying he was throwing back. So that's okay. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that, because I didn't really understand how the rule change affected the fish. And again, Alicia mentioned, I think it was Dylan, if I'm not mistaken, it was Dylan that caught that 7-pound mean mouth.
Yeah.
Holy!
Did they ever legitimately identify that fish as being a mean mouth?
I'd like this. I've talked to Jay about it, and he of course said the same thing. I do believe that it was a mean mouth. I haven't officially heard, but it certainly looked like a mean mouth. But to see one that big, again, I was talking to Richard Dunlop from our Legacy chat, who said, "Have you ever seen one that big?" No, and it really shouldn't be that surprising, because what you're taking, if anybody understands the hybrid of these two species, you are taking the most ferocious, the most voracious aspects of each of those species, and you're putting it in one fish. No wonder they call it the mean mouth. But I'm not at least a bit surprised that you saw one that big, just because of how their behavior is.
Yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. So
cool.
A couple of things that I wanted to touch on, Jim. Of course, we mentioned sizes and weights. This was what we saw this year. Final weight Dylan brought in 66.13. Like, this is just incredible. Like, these are big numbers, no matter what body of water, even the St. Lawrence for that matter. These are big numbers, and I know some folks would argue that, but these are big numbers. When you look at the year that Jim and I were down and Gussie won the Classic, look at the difference in the weights.
Yeah.
Look at the difference.
Not even in the ballpark.
Not even close.
Yeah.
Like, Gussie, no offense, Gussie, love you, bud, but your top weight, I want to say, was the bottom of, like you're looking at 8th position.
Yeah.
Like, that's incredible.
So you come to the St. Lawrence, the Eastern Basin here when it's happening, and first place after 3 days could be 70 pounds or more, and they can do the same again. You know what I mean? Like, 10th place will be like 65 or something. Like, there's so many more big fish here, but still, what they did is incredible. They upped the game. They they caught these fish. Who's to say that a week or 10 days doesn't make a difference?
100%.
Depending how the individual things were. Like when Gussie won, was it late? And this year it was early, so it makes the gap. Who's to say? Hey, it's but they kept them, and it's all there is to it.
100%.
That's all there is to it. And they also, I think they practiced a lot too. I think there was a lot of guys down there too that spent a lot of time.
They mentioned this on Sunday when I was watching the broadcast. They were saying that Dylan had basically been down there for a month leading up to the tournament, getting as much experience on the water. And a lot of folks predicted him to do well simply because of the amount of homework that he had done preparing for this event. But, at the end of the day, the fact that he's 23, 24 years old, 24 years old, to have that kind of time, to have a friend on the body of water so that he could camp out and get to know this reservoir like he did. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that really came together. And I want to say, there's an opportunity for a young lad to get his firsthand experience on what it's like to be humble. And I think it was Gary that set it up here, because this was something that I truly appreciated. Yes, it was you, Gary. Gary said, my favorite part is how classy he was receiving compliments and being very humble as a young man. Gary, if there's anything that I took away from all of that, was that exact thing. I could not get over how this boy never got rattled. His brother was visibly like emotional because of the win, and he had won himself. He had won earlier that weekend, if not that day, in the Bass Nation competition. So you got two nuts at the top of the at the top of the.
That didn't sound good.
No, it didn't, did it? Didn't mean it like that.
Good thing you didn't say a couple of nuts.
True
That's
enough.
okay. When Jeff from Limestone comes over here with Isabel, he'll, like his last name Dix, and I'll yell to Tammy, "Hey, there's a couple of Dicks here."
Yeah, absolutely. Alicia, if Jay was on tonight, we were going to talk about the bait, because the one thing that I don't know if it was done by purpose, but if he was supposed to keep that prototype under wraps, he's going to need some more coaching, because unfortunately he unveiled it Sunday morning, and I don't know if it was just because he was groggy or if maybe he meant to do it. I don't know. But when he sort of spilled the beans on what he was using, there was a lot of people going, "No, did he just say
you could have given him anything and he would have won." He was on point.
It is so true. He was
on point.
Yeah. As what was it? Zona said it. Our buddy Mercer said it. There was literally nothing he could do to blemish anything that was happening that way. Like literally nothing he did had any kind of like falter or hiccup. Like it was such clockwork. It was incredible to see.
Like I was at the show on the weekend, so I got to watch like 5 minutes of it. I don't even know if he lost any fish or had anything negative happen. That would have made a difference. So that's when you have a weekend like that where everything goes perfect on top of everything, it makes you unstoppable. Because so often it's one little goofy thing goes wrong. You have a strangest thing will happen. Like look when Jim Bitter would have won the Classic, and he had that fish about this big, and he dropped it, and all he had to do was weigh that fish in, and he wins. And he dropped it back in the lake. Yeah. Things like that. They have one, that's not a little thing, but the bass was little.
100%.
I can't imagine stuff like that happening. But the young kids too, they're sharp, eh?
Yeah, no, they are.
You better get up early, if you want to hurt them.
100%. So this, I believe, was what we were looking at in terms of the weights. Ott Defoe, he won in 2019 in Knoxville with about 16 pounds 6 ounces. Jeff averaged. Oh, so these are averages. So average 16.6. Jeff averaged 14.2, and I do believe that Dylan was up around 17, 18 pounds. So truly, to set that kind of pace, really something. And Jim, I have to ask, you say this all the time. Are you surprised at this day and age that we're seeing such quality fish being caught?
No, not at all.
Yeah, you say this all the time, and I have to say, a lot of folks are starting to warm up, and you start to hear them saying some of the same things that you are about the current state of our fishery. I know this is a little off topic, but I was talking to a longtime charter captain. He has a podcast down in Florida, and everybody's up in arms about the shark problem that they have down in Florida. And he's like, folks, it's, don't look at it as a negative thing. The fact that we have this many sharks tells you one thing and one thing only. There's tons of food here. There's tons of food. There's tons of everything here. I mean, don't look at the 80s that you could go down to any overpass or any causeway and just throw your line over and catch a 24-inch snook. We didn't have those days, but they do exist today. And the fishery down in Florida has never been better than it is right now. And I'm like, this Jim would be saying the same thing. Like this, it's like Jim behind me when this guy was talking? Because everything that you have said over the years here on live, he said the same thing. So,
like, I mean, when you think back, if you went back 15 years ago and you would have told people that tournaments here in the Eastern Basin here of Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence, guys were going to be coming in with 28, 29 pounds, they looked at you and said, what planet did you come off?
100%.
Nobody's ever caught one over 6 pounds.
Yeah.
And you think guys are going to bring in 5 of these a day? That kind of thing, because I'd never seen a smallmouth. I think the biggest smallmouth I ever saw up until then was like 580 or something. And you've often heard me talk about Simcoe when I won the second classic there, and I brought in one that was almost 6, and people freaked. And I did too. I mean, but you catch a 6-pound smallmouth in Simcoe now, and it's a nice fish.
Yeah.
If you got 5 more or 4 more like that to go with it, you have a pretty good chance.
Amen.
Nobody saw that coming.
No, true enough. To Gary's point, this was perfect. And again, this isn't rehearsed. This is right after the event. He's handed the trophy, goes into a sound booth, and he's peppered with a million questions, all of which he answered very, very well. But the one that I truly liked was this one.
You're going to qualify. You're now going to have an automatic bye to the 2027 Elite Series. What does that feel like?
Man, I'm starting to wonder how I'm going to finish college.
Well, he's not going to have any bills left when he comes out of college because he just got what, 300,000 plus. Plus, he had big fish too.
Yeah,
but, it's when it's all right, it's all right. It's what it is. When I won that second classic, I won big fish. I won everything like it was. What it's meant to be, it's meant to be. It's going to happen.
No one could share us that feeling better than you could, and I want to thank you for that, because at the end of the day, we can all sit around here. I mean, Alicia's been a part of some tournaments. There's others that are on this call and leaving comments that have been a part of their own club tournaments or whatever.
It's all relevant.
We all know what it's like to be there, I guess, to a certain degree. We all know.
Well, when you talk about tournaments and everything to do with it, Scotty, you don't have to have won, 85 grand to have an opinion and it to be 100% legit. It's just from a different angle. That's all it is. And that's really good when you get different opinions from different levels. That's when you can really, put something together and figure out what exactly, what it is.
The thing that I take away with Jim, and again, this is what admires me when it comes to you competitive anglers, is that you're able to put everything together in a package. And that package becomes your plan. And that plan is what you put into motion throughout the weekend. And the confidence of what it is that you're throwing, the confidence of how the fish are going to behave, the confidence that you exude yourself to be able to be in a situation where you're going to possibly take home some money and be able to do it and win. Dude, I can't imagine what that feels like.
Rocky and I were absolute sticklers for when we had a plan. We were sticklers for it to. I would say the turning point for us would happen at about 1 o'clock. If it wasn't going the way we wanted, we'd talk about it in the boat. And you had to convince the other person why we should deviate. And boy, we came up with some pretty good reasons. And I don't remember a time that we deviated that we didn't do really well. Because we had reasons. Yeah, we had reasons. And it was because this had changed, that had changed. We hadn't done this. We were here a week ago. Maybe the fish just have moved on. It's getting later. Because where we excelled really most often was like after the middle of August on. And
Right.
that was when fish started getting, they were planted where they were going to be, but they were starting to look for fall.
Right.
And that's where we really we didn't get rattled when we couldn't find them. If we couldn't find them, we'd go and look for them.
Right.
Yeah. It was
Stuff.
that type of a thing. And I still see myself do a lot of that.
Well, you're a hunk of birding love, and you've got a hat to prove it. Birding Baits Guide Service, and our good buddy Brian Sturch. Jim, again,
Yeah,
as
you
always,
like that, huh?
I love it, dude. But the fact that you're able, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. I know how tired you are. I know how run down you are, and the fact that you took some time.
I always got time for CFN, buddy. I might have to have a chat with you tomorrow before lunch.
All right, very good. As long as I haven't done anything too wrong.
No, sir.
Right on. With that being said, Jim, have yourself a great week. We look forward to seeing
Be
you
good,
next
kiddies.
Monday.
If you're ice fishing, please be safe. It's getting to that time, eh? We don't need to lose anybody.
Hey, friggin' man, buddy. We got Lawrence coming up right after basically a word of what's coming up at the Toronto Sportsman Show and all the vendors that are going to be participating in the Made in Canada Tackle Show.
Cool.
Take care, Jim. The one and only Lawrence.
How you doing?
I don't even know what to say now, because it's not Lawrence Gunther. It's, oh my God.
Never mind.
No, I got to remember. Are you kidding me?
That's why I don't do that.
Oh,
I don't. That's why I stopped doing that, because of, no one can remember my last name. It's like a password, the way it's spelled out. And I just leave it like that. Just never
it's
mind.
the intriguing part of, like, Lawrence. I've now found that missing piece, as you will. Anyway, you're right. We will move on. Lawrence, as always, it's a pleasure having you tonight, my friend, and we look forward to this each and every Monday, learning a little bit more. And I know we had talked about discussing, because it's been a few weeks since we've sort of circled back and explained what's going on out in BC. I thought it was apropos. I did see on Bluefish Canada this video of, is it Halcott? How? Anyway, let you listen.
Mhm.
You'll explain it,
Mhm.
and we'll learn together what's going on. What's the latest out in BC?
I'm sure by now most of you have seen a lot of information regarding the proposed changes to the salmon allocation policy. I can tell you that in the 20 years I've been the president of the SFI, and numerous years before that advocating on behalf of our fisheries, this is the most concerning issue that we have faced yet. The consultation period with DFO is over, and thank you to everyone that wrote letters and attended town hall meetings. But we're not done yet. Now we need to contact your local MP and the Minister of Fisheries. You can write a short, concise, and respectful email expressing your concerns. Emphasize the importance of maintaining priority access to Chinook and coho for the recreational fishery. We need this for sustainable and predictable fisheries. Stress the importance of maintaining the common property principle. Fish belong to all Canadians and should be managed on their behalf by DFO in Canada. If you're a business, you could include a few lines about potential financial impacts these changes could have. Regardless of your personal or business perspective, urge the Minister and local MP to maintain recreational priority for Chinook and Coho after conservation, FFC, and Indigenous rights-based fisheries. Remember, these changes aren't about salmon restoration, salmon habitat, southern resident killer whales, or other issues. These are threats to your right to fish and your access to fish. You can visit our website, fishingrights.ca, for more information and all the contact information that you need. Thank you for your support.
So that is Rob Alcock. I got his name wrong. I apologize for that. I know, Lawrence, that you have spoke to Rob and a lot of other parties that are involved in this. Is there a latest update that you can supply us that you can sort of hopefully give us a positive light on?
Well, the DFO decision has not been made yet, and last I heard, it's going to be March 31st now that the DFO minister will decide about these two issues. One is the reallocation of the quota of salmon that goes to the recreational fishery, and the other is the indeterminate closures of the recreational fishery in many parts of southern British Columbia. And those are the two big issues, right? Like, this is for, saving southern resident killer whales, for rebuilding fish numbers, and on and on and on. But it's mainly a southern resident killer whale sort of safeguard. That's the way it's being positioned. But the reallocation of the quota, I guess the idea, and I'm not sure how they put these two things together, but they're both happening around the same time. So they're thinking, well, if we're going to indeterminately close recreational fishing for salmon, say from April to, early October in the southern parts of British Columbia and off Vancouver Island, then maybe we can reallocate that salmon to another fishery, and that would be the commercial fishery. And so you're saying, okay, well, why, how's that going to help the southern resident killer whales? It doesn't really make any sense, but they're saying, well, if you're leaving it on the table, then give it to someone else and they can take care of it. And this is where, people are saying, no one's saying, I haven't heard, maybe there's comments, on social media and so on, but most of what the spokespeople for the recreational fishery are saying publicly and to the minister is that, this is common property that was decided in 1999, not that long ago, when this allocation was established after many consultations, that the fish belong to everybody. The fish belong to everybody. They're common property. And now First Nations communities are saying, well, that, we don't like that term common property because it's like commonwealth. It's sort of this whole sort of, settler sort of thing, and they don't think that it's necessary. So, but then there's people say, well, hang on, but the salmon do belong to all of us, and they at the same time they might belong to all of us, but there is different levels of access to the fish. The DFO technically, legally, has ultimate say on who gets to access the fish, right? By handing out licenses,
right,
and quotas and things like that, commercially and recreationally. How many days can you fish? How many fish can you keep as a recreational fisher? And commercially, how many fish can you net and capture before you have to put your nets away? DFO can make those decisions. They can't necessarily make those decisions, for sure, for First Nations social, ceremonial, and food fisheries. Those take priority over everything. Right. But they can only shut that down if there's a serious conservation issue, same as what's going on the Yukon River right now, right? And has been going on for a number of years on the Yukon River. There were DFO and the government of Alaska, because that river goes through both the Yukon territories and the state of Alaska. They agreed that no one should catch any fish. The salmon should be left alone, and so they can recover. And so in extreme situations, you can say no fishing. And so it's the DFO maintains their right to do so. And then commercially as well, commercial comes after, the food, social, and ceremonial. And it sort of comes before recreational. So it's because it's seen as essential. But then what's happened to the commercial fishery on the West Coast over the last 10 years is a lot of the licenses have been sold off. A lot of commercial fishers have sold off their boats. They've been encouraged. There's been buybacks by the federal government to buy those licenses and buy those boats. And in many cases, those licenses and boats have been turned over to First Nations communities as a way of sort of building their economies to help them achieve self-sustainability and have an opportunity, because they didn't have an opportunity, initially when those licenses and boats were being sold and the licenses were being handed out. The First Nations fishers weren't at the table getting their share, and so they say, well, okay, we'll incentivize commercial fishers to sell us back their licenses. We'll give them money, and the fishing's poor anyways, and there's very few days when you can go fishing, so people are going to lose their boats because they can't make their payments anyways. So the DFO bought the boats, paid for the licenses, and turned them over for free to the First Nations fisheries. So what percent of the First Nations fishery, commercial fishing, is done by First Nation fishers? I don't know. But, you could say at the same time, most of the commercial fishing boats that aren't operated by First Nations fisheries are owned by one individual, and on the West Coast. So it's one guy versus the commercial Indigenous fishing on the commercial side. So, I mean, there are some people who have their license, but it's like that now. So, but I don't think that these marine recreational salmon fisher representatives, these anglers, are saying we don't want our, salmon going to Indigenous people. That's not what they're saying. No one's saying that, but Indigenous people are pushing back and saying, hey, that's, we don't appreciate the fact that you want to keep that common property language, and you don't want to have your salmon reallocated because it's a racist thing. It's racism against First Nations communities by saying that. So that's made the whole debate difficult, to say the least. But the recreational fishers, the ones that are doing that are being chosen to speak on behalf of the recreational anglers, are not saying that sort of stuff. They're not promoting that sort of stuff. They acknowledge that recreational fishing is a privilege. It's a privilege, and we fish at the privilege of the government, who decides when and we can go fishing and how many fish we can keep, if any, and the species and so on, and where, and so all of that stuff, right? It's the regulations, right? So they're saying, but don't suspend it permanently, without a deadline in the future for that to end, like they used to. It would just be every year they would make decisions. And now they're saying, well, we'll just make a decision to stop the fishing until the science proves otherwise, that it can come back. So they're losing two things. They're losing their fishery, and they're losing their quota. And it's got people really, really, really worried.
Now, okay, there's there's a few things I want to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned that folks had unfortunately got to a point where, the quota, or at least their livelihood, was not able to make payments on the boat. DFO stepped in, purchased these boats from them, and then handed them over to First Nations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with the licenses.
That doesn't seem very fair.
Yeah, so no bank loan, right? No bank loan. But if you're you look on a lot of these First Nations communities, you say, okay, you're going to buy this $800,000 fishing boat. It's not in the realm of possibility. And so they give a grant, they give a loan. You saw that on the east coast of Canada a lot too, when the cod fishing. It was in the 1980s. People were still fishing out of homemade wooden dories, with old car engines in them.
Yeah.
And that's how most people were going out and catching their lobster and catching their cod. It was in the homemade wooden boats. And then the government said, you know what, we'll give you grants. You can upgrade your boats. You can buy a new aluminum boats, new fiberglass boats, and bigger boats. And you can go out with more modern equipment, and you go out and fish more efficiently. So instead of having a little boat with a tiny engine and you're just putting out and putting back every day, you can go out now for a day or two or three and fish this new territory, like the economic zone that came around in the 80s, right? We never had that until the 80s. We had we had our territory, our official territory, but those whole economic zone of 200 miles beyond our coastline, that was new. But how can you fish that if you don't have boats that can get out there? So the federal government gave out lots and lots and lots and lots of grants to people on the East Coast who had old wooden boats so that they could upgrade their boats and go chase cod and lobster much further out from shore.
Now, are we talking like, how do I say this without being disrespectful? Did First Nations get the same opportunity as regular Canadians?
Out east in the 1980s? No.
Yeah. Okay.
No, they were not in the game because the law that said First Nations people have a right to earn a livelihood, that was only decided in the 1990s, right? That was in the 1990s when that's
I remember that. Yeah,
was taken. Yeah, so up until then, they were sidelined. They had no money and they had no boats, so they were really, they didn't have the licenses. They didn't have the money to buy a boat. They didn't have the money to buy a license. I mean, back in the 80s, a license like that was like gold. You didn't sell it. You pass it down in your will.
Yes.
That was your main inheritance, right? That the oldest son would get the fishing license from the father, and carry on the tradition.
It's so true, because really, at the end of the day, what quota is worth nothing right now? Not too many. Like, I mean, if you have a quota, it's worth something, no matter what it is that you're selling. They're definitely worth something. But I'm very intrigued by that must have been heartbreaking for some of these commercial anglers to lose their boats and then to see them being driven by.
Well, you saw it on the East Coast too. You saw a lot of people who were getting older on the East Coast in the last 20 years being offered money from DFO to sell their lobster boats and sell their licenses, and to take that $1 million and leave the industry.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys, when you're 60, 65 years old and you think, I've been doing this for 35, 40 years, and I'm getting a little, it's getting tiring, got arthritis and all that, and they think, I'll take $1 million. And that was when, fishing had slowed down, right? 20 years ago, you weren't making as much money at it. So they were happy to take that $1.5 million for their boat and their license. And that boat and license was turned over to First Nations communities who agreed that, we'll fish and we'll follow the rules. And most First Nations communities on the East Coast are following the rules that DFO sets out on where you can set your traps, when you can set your traps, how many traps you can set, what size lobsters you're allowed to keep, and they're following those rules. And then there's all sorts of people who aren't, Indigenous, non-Indigenous. There's other people who are breaking the rules too, right? So we see that, in the East Coast, and I know what's going on the West Coast. I'm not sure if anyone's breaking rules, but there's rules being broken for sure. If you don't have enforcement, if you don't invest in enforcement, people look around, they say, no one's looking. Holy crap. No one cares. No one cares. I'll just do whatever I want then, I guess, and no one's going to catch me because no one's around.
Yeah. It's unfortunately a shitty way to look at things, but the reality is it is. Perception is the reality. Having said all this, and I feel bad for the recreational anglers out there, because wasn't it them that helped eradicate the whole netting program? The open water netting, not what netting.
The aquaculture?
Yeah, the aquaculture. Wasn't it the recreational that approached and lobbied DFO?
Yeah, there was a lot of that for sure. Recreational anglers had a big voice in the 80s and the 90s. And we're saying, look, you're killing our fish. All this aquaculture industry is being set up at the mouths of the rivers, and the smolts coming down the rivers have to pass through and beside these nets and get covered in lice and head out into the ocean covered in lice, and they die. And and there's diseases as well. There was a whole issue of disease transfer, and it is problematic. And there was a lot of advocating to move that by conservationists, and especially conservationists and first, and some First Nations communities were definitely against it, and some had bought into it and had aquaculture operations going on, and still do to this day on the west coast of Canada, and believe that they're doing it responsibly and sustainably, and they should have the right to do it because they're making a living. And so it's not always black and white, right? It's not always black and white, but and then we hear there were some decisions announced by DFO just to further add some whole, another ingredient into this whole very murky soup, is that DFO has now agreed to turn over responsibility for commercial and recreational fishing and other activities that take place along certain stretches of the coast and areas of the ocean that relate to the traditional rights and territories of 3 large First Nations communities. And now they're taking responsibility for all of that activity. And not, DFO is not just walking away and saying, they can't walk away, because legally they have that legal responsibility, right? And no one's changing that law anytime soon. But they recognize that First Nations communities also have a right to the fish and fisheries and the territory as acknowledged in a number of court cases. So they're saying, okay, instead of us taking the lead on it, why don't you take the lead on it, and we'll watch. We'll step in, I guess, if there's a problem, but otherwise we'll step back and let you guys take the lead. And so what does that mean? Does that mean recreational fishing licenses, commercial fishing licenses, access, quotas, seasons, all of that, priority access? How's that all going to be managed? Is it going to be one group making all those decisions? Is it going to be done in consultation amongst all the groups? And so that's even scared the recreational angling community on the West Coast even more, is when they see these decisions where management authority is being transitioned from DFO to First Nations communities for large swaths of the ecosystem where fishing takes place. And they're saying, wow, this could go bad for us. This could go bad for us, right? They're saying this, how are we going to have a conversation with First Nations communities about access? Now they're saying we're not, First Nations communities are saying, hey, don't say we're going to shut down recreational fishing. We're not shutting down recreational fishing. We're not shutting it down, but we're just establishing the fact that we have the rights over it. So I don't know what that means. Like, I read that and I think, what does that mean? We're not shutting down recreational fishing, but we have the rights over managing the recreational fishing and the commercial fishing. And so what does that mean? Who gets who gets to run the businesses, the outfitters, the lodges? Who gets to catch fish and how many fish? I don't know. Who gets to buy a fishing license and who doesn't? I don't know what that means. No one knows. No one knows at this point what any of that means.
That province out there really is. How can I say it without upsetting a whole group of people? But there's a lot of how can I say it, distractions going on in that province. I don't know how else to say it without unfortunately slighting somebody politically or from ethical background. At the end of the day, there is just so much happening in that province, whether it be energy, whether it be resources, whether it be who's in control, the fight for power. I hope we figure it out there, because I will say, Mark brings up a great a point in regards to seals, the leopard seal. We're talking about an explosion out that way. If there's any management that I think needs to happen, is a suggestion that perhaps a call is important, that we might want to put forth an idea or I don't know, a season, if you will. And it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be First Nations. Let's be. If you guys are empowered to manage, then you know what. Here are the keys. Have at her.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of seals on the East Coast, a lot of seals on the West Coast, and they can be problematic when it comes to when you have a large net behind your boat and you're pulling in a big net full of fish, and the seals, you know, they're like dogs, you know, they're smart as dogs. They think look at that, man, that's a whole lot of fish in one small area. We should get some of that. And, you know, they're climbing into the nets and getting in the way and tearing at the nets and so on. So, yeah, that, you know, it's nature saying being opportunistic. Does it mean that there's too many seals, or is just a whole bunch of seals in this one area right behind this boat because they know what to look for? But are they coming around after, you know, when you come with trolling along with a couple downriggers and then you're reeling in a salmon and then a seal or a sea lion grabs it? And you're going to say, oh, okay, we got to move. But, you know, that's the way it is. You see this in the ocean all the time. Just move.
I can see that. I can see that argument. And you know, a valid argument. Richard, thanks, buddy. Too much political involvement. Yes, that's probably the more apropos way of addressing it. But there's so much I'd love to say that I'm very cautious and I'm holding myself back, biting my tongue. But at the end of the day, like, you know, when this fishery is so vibrant and we need it so badly, the world needs it so badly, we can't get this wrong. Like, you know, never mind who's in control, never mind who's going to make the ultimate decision, but we need workshops. We need brainstorming sessions. We need the stakeholders to be able to sit in a room and discuss this and do so for the best interest of the future, not of the now, of the future. And I don't know. It seems to me, Lawrence, that we might be losing that opportunity.
The opportunity to sit down and bring everyone together at the same table, you know, there has been some opportunities, but this has been very, very limited and very, very controlled, right? Because there's been a fear that you're going to have these groups together and there's going to be people saying things and feelings are going to get hurt and tempers are going to flare and you're going to lose ground. You're going to lose ground and it's going to make for some very bad media because media, you know, it's like, you know, someone's told me, one person said, you know, well, let's just go out, get everyone's boat and let's go blockade a port. And you know, it just takes one character in one of those boats to pull out a rifle or to, you know, bump another boat or, you know, and then that media films all that and the language that's being and the fists and all of that and swinging of bats and then it all goes to hell, right? We see this, you know, in parts of Canada. You know, you see this, you know, where it can so easily turn to that, where people are burning their fish houses and burning their docks and setting their boats on fire. And you see this on the East Coast. It's been going on for decades. And you see it on the West Coast, you know. So blockades, that's a pretty extreme level of advocacy. And you have no assurances that one hothead isn't going to ruin the whole message, right? So there's been a lot of in the recreational community saying, no, we're not doing that. We're not taking that risk. It's way too fraught with potential issues. And then we lose it because then we look like idiots. We look like a bunch of racists. And then all any public sympathy is gone. And right now, you know, you think about everything that's going on the West Coast and, you know, the government just built a big pipeline out there and they built some liquid natural gas pipelines out there and plants, and they want to pump, you know, gas and oil to the West Coast and sell it to Asia and make some money. And there's a lot of controversy about all of that stuff. So if they can at the same time turn around and say, hey, look what we're doing here. And we're doing reconciliation, and we're doing land back, and we're doing our conservation and protection with our, you know, 30 by 30, you know, that the whole idea that the Canada committed to conserve and protect 30% of our land and 30% of our oceans by 2030. We're not there. We were 20 by 20. We were there at 20 by 20. By 2020, we had 20% coverage, but it's fallen short in the last 5 years. We're not getting to 2030 by 30. It doesn't look like we'll get there, but some people are still pushing for us to get there. So
And
there's
what's protected? What do we
That- well,
classify as protected?
so there's, if you look at DFO in terms of the oceans, they have a very limited list of what that could include. But then they say we will set up a local management committee made up of local stakeholders, and they will then define it further. And they will make it reflect their own needs. So they'll say, okay, this spot here is a spawning area, can't go there. This spot here is another sort of historic or traditional or something or another, who can't go there. And they'll finesse it, right? They'll finesse it because you don't want to have some bureaucrat in Ottawa making all these decisions, just saying no fishing, no fishing, no fishing, no fishing. They're not saying that. They're saying, but they're letting the local people. And then you look at who's on these management committees, and that's where they have no control on those decisions. And you look at who's putting on these management committees, because at the same time when the federal government started launching this 30% by 2030 promise, the whole land back movement got started up pretty good on the West Coast, especially where you had a lot of First Nations communities that had unresolved treaties, and said, and they're saying, we want to be the ones. We want to be the ones that are going to control our seas and shores and lands on our territorial land. We want to be doing that because we've done it for 10,000 years, and we want to keep doing it. And we have the knowledge, and we have the expertise, and we have the values, and we care. And we're conservationists by nature, and they say, and they started this whole Indigenous protected and conserved areas. So now you had two competing sort of sanctuary kind of things coming along. You had the government one. It was mainly led by Parks Canada, and then you had the Indigenous one, which was the Indigenous conserved and protected areas. And then the government would say, okay, come and join us here on setting up this one. And the Indigenous communities would say, no, we don't need you. You come here and help us set up ours. We're not going to come there and help you set up yours. We want you to come here and set up ours, right? So who's in the leadership role? So a lot of those leadership roles, we see this quite happening on a much faster level in the last 10 years on the West Coast, where it's the First Nations communities who are taking those leadership roles in establishing these conserved and protected areas. And when you ask, well, conserved and protected, what's that mean? What does conserved mean? Okay, we all know what conservation means, but what's protected? What does that mean? And that's a little vague. And I don't know what that is, because you look and Google that all you want, but it's not clear, and you won't find answers. But or if you ask people, you won't find answers necessarily. But protected means, it could mean as simple as creek walkers who are walking up and down the creeks and making sure people aren't snagging, or making sure that there's landslides, or forestry and deforestation and so on and so forth, that it's protected against that sort of thing. So you would hope that's what it is. And it doesn't go further than that, but who knows, right? And I'm not saying you just don't know, but I would imagine you don't know. So
and then you got groups like us out there trying to educate, Bluefish Canada out there trying to educate, Bluefish Radio trying to out there educate the masses. Where the heck do we start? A new Canadian comes to Canada, buys himself a boat, decides he wants to go fishing out in BC. Like, where do you point him in the direction to fish? Because this could be a sanctuary, this could be a no-fly zone, no fish zone. Like, try keeping up with all this. How?
Yeah, and that's been going on for 100 years. Like the rules and the nuances of where you can fish in the mouths of rivers. Like, you think about it, all these salmon are going to go up this river. And maybe 2 or 3 times a year. With the Chinook, it might happen 2 or 3 or even 4 times a year at different times of the year. You have different groups of Chinook that come at different times. And it's like setting a clock. It's like the moon. You know roughly when it's going to happen. People plan their vacations to be there when it's going to happen. Then they line up their little rowboats 100 years ago with their fishing rods at the mouths of the river, such, side by side, and they're there, catching the fish as they pass underneath their boats. So it's been, so you can't say, okay, you can't just let that go on, from sun up to sundown every day of the year, because that's going to definitely impact the runs. So they say, okay, you can do it at this time for this hour on these days of the week. And then you can only do it at this spot for a period, and it gets very, very, very precise. And these rules have been around for 100 years, right? And from a recreational fishing perspective, they've worked pretty well. Maybe, maybe there was sometimes some overfishing, but then it was dialed back and dialed in. It wasn't as bad as stringing a gill net across the river, which is what we had when all those fish canneries popped up along the shores of British Columbia, right? At the mouth of every river, there was a cannery or two or three, and they would just string a gill net across the mouth of the river and just catch everything, and just, right away catch it, clean it, and put it in cans. And when that canning technology came around about 100 years ago, 125 years ago, I guess, you could finally do that. You didn't have to put the fish on ice and then transport them on ice before they went bad. You could put them in a can and seal the can, and the fish were good for a year in those cans. So you could do that now. Like you could ship it out and sell it around the world. So there was a lot of salmon were wiped out from those canning industries, from those gill netters. And, that was a big problem. So, we've had some bad decisions, and we've learned, and, we're still learning. And we've had some legal decisions about, sharing and who has rights and whose rights are stronger than other people's rights. And the courts have stepped in on that. And, but what we haven't had, look, for the longest time, Indigenous people made all their own decisions. And then we came along, and then we told them, you can't put up your weirs anymore. We'll give you gill nets. But you can't do weirs. You can't do trapping, where the fish come in and swim up through a whole bunch of mazes and end up in a pool. And then you go in there and spear the ones you want and let the rest go. You can't do that anymore, because it gave them too much control. So they said you had to take all your weirs down and you had to fish with gill nets, and we'll give you the gill nets. So they gave them some gill nets, but not really. And they gave them the old crappy ones that were mostly rotten and broken. And but gill nets are way less discriminate than a weir, where the fish aren't hurt and you can pick the ones you want out of there. So it's they lost control. Now they're getting some control back, and they don't trust us because we took it away from them. And so they said, we'll do it, and we'll follow your basic rules, but you watch us and we'll do a fine job. And I think what people really want is to say, look, the past is the past, right? And yeah, let's learn from the past, but it's time to forgive and move forward. And that's reconciliation, and let's work together. I think that's the goal. But I think DFO is maybe a little bit scared that doesn't work. And then you have, face it, the whole salmon thing on the West Coast has been, politicized a fair bit too over the last 10, 20 years. And that hasn't helped, when you politicize issues and you make it a partisan issue, when these things should be bipartisan, because everyone goes fishing. It doesn't matter what party you belong to, what political party you support. There's people from all political parties that go fishing. I know tons of Green people and NDP people, on the West Coast, and who love fishing. And so it's not a partisan issue. It shouldn't have become a partisan issue. And I don't want to point fingers, but I think most anglers accept that, and they say, look, we just want to make sure, let's talk, let's sort this out. And I think that's where we need to get to. And it's not happening. It's sort of happening symbolically, but it's not really, it's not the we're not there yet.
When it comes to the province of BC, yes, unfortunately, we're a long ways away from being there yet. And I say that all kidding aside, I think that province more so than ever, we definitely need to get some folks in a room and hash some things out, because I don't like where that province is going from a bunch of standpoints. And when it comes to commercial fishing, salmon, orcas, and all of the issues that we talk about at great length here on CFN, at the end of the day, I don't really see a resolve. I was pretty excited when the decision was made to get rid of those aquaculture sites out at the mouth of the Fraser and other tributaries. That was a real win. I have to say, I think you and I both rejoiced as that being a win. And now it seems like we're right back in the mud again.
Well, we got to celebrate the wins, and but we're not done solving this. Like, for sure, I agree, but we can't lose hope. And you look on the East Coast, and there's aquaculture still storming ahead like crazy on the East Coast, up and down the coast there, and the Atlantic salmon are suffering as a result. And so nothing's reined in on the East Coast on that front. And then you look on the West Coast of the United States. I mean, there's no aquaculture anywhere on the West Coast of the United States. Canada was the last one to be doing that, but it might be coming back now. You look at the National Marine Fishery Association and run by the U.S. government, and it's definitely pro aquaculture. And to be honest, 90% of aquaculture around the world is done fairly sustainably, and it's not done with pens in oceans, right? That it's popular and it's growing, still growing in many places, but many places are saying, no, we don't want that. We don't want that, and we want to have it done on land. And it's for most different species of fish, like, you can do it on land, right? You can grow your fish on land.
I think it's either China or Japan, and we need to applaud when technology has certainly found a foothold, and it looks like we're moving in the right direction. They have those massive ships, and I think it's Japan that owns them, and they're doing aquaculture out in the ocean, and they're able to move these boats from time to time. If there's a storm coming, they're able to duck in, but basically they're moving the whole facility, and they're not allowing the effluent to concentrate in one area. They're able to move the facility around, and really, at the end of the day, that's probably the most natural way, in my opinion, to do aquaculture. Is that they're meant to live in the ocean. Yes, they spawn on fresh water, and we all know that, but they're meant to live out in the ocean. Yeah. And the fact that we're moving it around and not allowing that effluent to concentrate, really, to me, I don't think we could answer all of the concerning questions that arise from aquaculture any better than those ships.
Yeah. And then you look at, the storms on the East Coast of Canada, right? The North Atlantic, and how vicious those storms get during storm season, right? The perfect storm and 60, 80-foot waves. Yep. It's I don't know if there's any floating aquaculture operation that could withstand that. They don't. That's, they get ripped to shreds on the East Coast. That's why they hide them in behind the islands and in the mouths of rivers, away from those storms, right? But that's also where the lobster come to breed and lay their eggs, and that's where the Atlantic salmon go and move in and out of. And so it's very problematic for that, because there's a lot of creatures that use those very same spots because it's sheltered, it's protected. They say, this offshore stuff might aquaculture could have a chance, and heck, if they can put an oil rig out there in the ocean and drill for oil, and things go well enough, then maybe it's possible.
There's always a means if there's a will.
Yeah. But how much are you going to spend on it, right? Like, how much you going to spend?
This is just it, exactly. Yeah. And it all depends on where we see it as the hierarchy of importance. because we'll spend the money. Trust me, this country does a very good job of spending money that we don't necessarily have. So, far be it for me to suggest that this might be an avenue that we might want to look a little bit further into. But irregardless,
but you look, there's 2 billion people in the earth that get their primary source of protein is wild fish. And we can do it. And the United States is doing a pretty good job in terms of their commercial fisheries. And, they're doing, most of their commercial fisheries are very sustainable, and they're harvesting more fish than they know what to do with. They're exporting it now because they got 400 million Americans, and they can't eat it all. They're not that interested in eating all the food.
That was going to be my point, Lawrence.
Yeah.
It has to be sustainable, because if it wasn't, the oceans would be void of life. The amount of harvest that we do, and the amount that we're able to consume, and the number of people on the planet, like, we should have emptied the oceans by now.
We are, but in most places around the world, they are being emptied, and we just keep finding new spots and then hammering them and then moving on to another spot. And that's going on. Like, we've got, 3-4 times the amount of ships out there catching fish than we have of the fish that can be supported by all those ships. And most of them are Chinese, and they move around the whole world and fish in international waters and sneak into other places. It's but if we have 200 miles on, or 380 kilometers off our coast, just like the Americans do, that we control, and we can do a better job, like the Americans are, in controlling what happens off their coasts and making sure that those fisheries are being managed properly. And we're starting to get there. So I think there's a lot of positive steps being taken, and a lot of good things that are happening, and making sure everyone gets an equal chance to be part of that is important, and that we don't segregate or based on who you are, your culture, or whatever, and deny people access to that, push them aside. And but I think right now, like, to bring us back to where we started, I think recreational anglers right now on the west coast of Canada are feeling like they're being pushed aside, that they're losing ground.
Well, as long as the discussions are happening, it means that we're working towards something. What that is, and I guess we're all going to find out. But as long as we're talking about it, it's basically at the forefront of everybody's concerns, and let's hope it stays that way. Real quick before we say goodbye, being the more controversial of the three of our panel, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this, and I think
I can do it.
I know you can. Trust me, I know you can. A lot of attention has been brought recently with the ice rescue that happened out in Owen Sound. A lot of negative, a lot of positive, but more so than anything, for me, it's concerning. When we have people that don't even fish, and I'm sure you may have been asked about it. What happened out in Owen Sound? What went out there? These are people that don't even fish, don't even know anything about fishing, and of course, it hits media and it's talked about, and we see it all over our social media feeds. Right, wrong, or indifferent, doesn't matter. I'm not here to judge on any of the decisions that were made leading up to it, or the decisions that eventually saved these people. But these people got very, very lucky. In fact, as it's coming to light, I don't think a lot of us really realize how lucky they got. It was brought to my attention today that it was an OPP helicopter that actually went out and rescued them, because the Coast Guard were unable to attend. They were too busy dealing with other stuff. So I think with some of the video footage that was shared, it just goes to show how close they came to no longer being able to.
And these were experienced ice anglers. So, falling off.
With that being said, sorry, Lawrence. With that being said,
go ahead.
Is it dangerous that we're bringing this stuff to light? That we're allowing folks that perhaps, as I mentioned, may not have anything to do with fishing, may not know anything about currents and whatever, and just look at this as, listen, we can't afford a mishap like this again. You know, we almost lost 20 odd souls. We spent a whole bunch of money that we don't have. Could it be possible that the powers to be say, you know what, to avoid this in the future, we're just going to say no ice fishing across the board?
Well, then you got to say there's no backcountry skiing in British Columbia anymore, or Alberta. And you got to say there's no more mountain climbing anymore, because those are all,
Great arguments.
you know, sports that are 10 times more risky than ice fishing, right? How many people have been killed this year in avalanches, you know, backcountry skiers, right? You know, that's on the West Coast. You can't, you know, people want to do what they want to do. And if you say, sorry, you can't do that, you're not going to go skiing, you're not going to go mountain climbing, you're not going to go ice fishing, because we don't want you to hurt yourself. You know, and then people say, well, if they get avalanches and so on and need rescuing, then they should have to pay for the rescues, right? And you could say that too, but who's that gonna, you know, that's going to become the sport of the rich and elite then, and the average person just won't be able to do it because they won't have the money to pay for the insurance to do it. And you know, right now we can do it, you know, and our insurance, you know, look at it, you can even drive your vehicle out on the ice, and your car insurance or truck insurance is going to let you do it. So we're pretty lucky. And once in a while things happen, and the insurance company's monitoring those risks, and they're not the ones at the front of the pack yelling, no more ice fishing, no more ice fishing. Yeah, I said it's not easy to get ice fishing if you're going to take a whole bunch of kids ice fishing to get insurance for that. A lot of insurance companies don't have the stomach for that one, you know, but you know, that would be different, right? If you had 400 scouts on that chunk of ice and it floated off and scouts were dropping off the side and disappearing, that would have been, you know, that people have the right to say, well, hang on, who's in charge here? Who's making these decisions to take a bunch of scouts on the ice that's breaking up? But these are grown-ups. They have the right to make those decisions, just like people who mountain climb and backcountry ski and drive snowmobiles up the sides of mountains and on and on and on. Whitewater rafting and parasailing and
you make great arguments. Those are very solid arguments, and that's the whole reason I asked you the question. It was, as I said, if it had been what you had suggested, and let's say it was a scout organization, and you had counselors or young scouts falling off the edge, yeah, I dare say that kind of limelight would not have bode well for any of us.
For the scout leaders that made that decision, not because they were ice fishing, but because they took them out there, right? You know, at that time of year. And
I'd like to hope that it would end there. I'm not so convinced. I have a feeling that we just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the negativity that we seem so drawn into that. I don't know what it is, but
well, I remember the junior forest ranger program. Where you could, you know, 16 years old, you could go become a junior forest ranger and go north in Ontario and fight forest fires all summer.
Yes.
16 years old. And then a bunch of them, I think it was 20 or so, got cut off from the rest of the forest for the firefighters in Algonquin Park, I think, somewhere up there. And a bunch of them died in that fire. And then they said, okay, you know what? We'll keep the junior forest ranger program, but we're not going to let them fight fires anymore. But as soon as you become an adult, 18, have at it. We want you to come up here and fight fires. And how many forest fire, you know, people die in fighting forest fires, and it's what it is. It's what it is. You know, if you're an adult in this country and you want to do something stupid, well, maybe it's just one way of, you know, calling the weak ones, right?
True. Fool around and find out, as they say.
We got that right.
Always, Lawrence, I really appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being the anchor leg tonight. As I said, I think it was important that we circle back and talk about what's going on the West Coast. I know folks who don't live there may not have as much interest as those who do, but at the end of the day, it is angling. It's you know, and whether we want to be dramatic about it or not, but it's under attack, and I think it's important that we as anglers at least be educated about what's going on. You don't necessarily have to have an opinion, but it's good to be educated. And when it has to do with our pastime, I think it's imperative that we are. So, Lawrence, thanks for allowing us to do that tonight.
Oh, my pleasure. And I hope I didn't step on anyone's feelings or, inadvertently express some ideas that maybe would be perceived as not very aware or culturally aware. Not my intention, and I didn't mean that in any way. I'm just, sometimes we have to talk about things, though, and we have to say, okay, you don't know, I don't know, so let's talk about it so we can start to know.
Amen.
That's all. Yeah,
absolutely.
All right,
well,
man.
you have yourself a great week. Look forward to seeing you next Monday. And in the
Sportsman
meantime,
show. Hopefully, see you.
Are you coming down? Are you
I'll be
coming
there
down
Friday? Yeah, I'll be there Thursday night for the big dinner, and then Friday walking around the show. Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing you, pal.
All right, man. Cheers.
You take care of yourself. All the best, my friend.
You too, buddy.
And that is our show. At the end of the day, lots of great topics. Again, congratulations to Dylan Nutt for winning the Bassmaster Classic. Your life will never be the same, and that's a good thing. But I do believe this isn't the last trophy you're going to win. I'm sure we're going to see you on the podium a time or three in the future. Again, as Lawrence mentioned, Toronto Sportsman Show is coming up this Thursday, but also just before that, on Wednesday, we are going to be joined by the good folks over at KBC, Kayak Bass Canada, and Kyle Carruthers will be joining us, Danny and I, this Wednesday at 8 o'clock to talk about what's upcoming for CanCast. Look forward to this. Should be a great show. We always have a great group from KBC that join us and interact with our community. So we're looking forward to that. This Wednesday, 8 o'clock. By all means, please join us. We'd love to have you. And because there's no Jay tonight, of course, it is because of our beloved Stephanie Barnucz. She is celebrating her sweet 16, and we want to wish her a happy birthday. Jay will be back next Monday. Looking forward to that. But in the meantime, the Barnucz family is celebrating and probably blowing out a candle or three as we speak. That's all we have for tonight. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thanks for all of your wicked comments and, of course, your interaction and just positive support. We can't thank you enough with everything that's going on in the world right now. Being positive is not easy to do. So I think it's important that we celebrate it, and we should certainly recognize it when it happens, because I think it's just far too easy to be negative these days. So for all those who aren't, we appreciate you. And Dave, we appreciate you, and we'd appreciate if you were to take us away tonight. I want you guys to have a great week. Enjoy the Toronto Sportsman Show. Looking forward to seeing and shaking some hands with some of you folks down there at the show. It should be a half-decent weekend. Lots of folks are going to be there. It's the granddaddy. It's the big one. So we're looking forward to that. Have yourselves a great week. Love you all. Take care. All the best. Dave, take us away. Peace.
Well, as much as I hate to admit it, I guess we've run out of time. So I've enjoyed it, but I'm going to do something I haven't done since season 1. Turn out the lights. The party's over. They say that all good things must end.